Well, it's great to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting into the music,
Yep.
Dreamtime, and your world of music. So thank you for reaching out to Neon Jazz. It's great to connect.
Yeah.
So let's begin our journey before we get into the new album by asking you this. 5.5 years or so ago, this pandemic was changing our lives, especially jazz
Yeah.
musicians. How
Yeah.
did you get through that, and how did it change the way that you create and live today?
Well, things have changed, now, back in the day, so there's no emails or whatever, but now you can email people, here's the song, they can do things at home, yeah, send an email back, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, talk to me about the brand new album, Dreamtime. Give me an idea of what your vision was and how this album feels.
Well, I've got loads of jazz ideas. I just started with jazz. Whereabouts are you?
I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, right in the middle of
Kansas
America.
City. Yeah, I've been to Kansas. Yeah,
Okay.
I've been on tour. Yeah, I toured with a band called Delamitri. I don't know if you're familiar.
I've heard of the band. Yeah.
Yeah, we were
Yep.
in top 10 America. We've toured. Basically, I kind of started off in a jazz way and then joined the band, many years ago. But now, oh, jazz, you know, I've started this jazz club in Glasgow with some kind of reasonably famous artists, in Scotland. Um, and I made two jazz albums, of kind of and sending out ideas to some players. Yeah. Oh, there's a great guitar player in another city. I sent him a track. He played his guitar, and it just sounds great. Yeah. Uh-huh. Nowadays you can just, some people record in my house
Yeah.
here. I've got a kind of studio set up here. Or you can sing in the microphone there, or you can play your saxophone if you're a saxophone player. Yeah, I've got a grand piano here. I've got guitars. I've got everything. Yeah. And you know, um, but just at the weekend there, I've started this jazz club in Glasgow in a place called the Art Club. It's got a beautiful grand piano, and oh, just we can play live. A real idea. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, what are you hoping the listener gets from this album? What's your hope?
Sorry.
What are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
Just just in jazz radio and all that. I've got some jazz radio places that play them. You know, I think I can't really remember which tracks are on it, but there's a saxophone player, Raymond McDonald, who's made loads of albums in Scotland of experimental music and other kinds of music. Um, he's the best sax player I know. And then, the some of the singers were prize-winning Scottish artists. I got some of them I haven't met, kind of a lockdown time where, oh, I've sent you a jazz track. They can really do this now. Girls, whatever, with an audio interface and a microphone and sing the beautiful melody and lyrics, if they really like that. Some of them come round to my house who are really experienced jazz singers. Yeah, just so like you got the idea of the song, you can just deliver it, you know. Mhm. And I've got, a lot of kind of jazz players I know or jazz kind of artists. All they're doing is kind of a bit cabaret or whatever, a bit just like, oh, play, do sing My Funny Valentine or Summertime or something like that. No, just back in the day, there were songwriters, and I like writing jazz songs
Yeah.
and jazz pieces. Yeah, I've got ideas about that, quite a lot. Back in the day, oh, there was Cole Porter, there was George Gershwin, you know, eventually Burt Bacharach and other people. But a lot of just jazz artists don't really think about new ideas. Uh, and I really think about, I've got ideas for this jazz club I've kind of started here. Just the next one is the last one is just after New Year's Day. Pick yourself up idea. do some old songs and all that. The next one's Paris, the city of love. Idea. Oh, do some kind of Paris and French ideas. Yeah, yeah, and have an idea.
Yeah.
Which is just the theme. Yeah,
Yeah.
hmm
So take me back to your beginnings. How did music become your life? Did you always want to be a musician? Was this always going to be your life?
Well, uh, I started learning the piano, and really at the start, maybe when I was about 10 or something like that, I got piano lessons for about a year and got to what in Britain it's called grade one level. That's really the first step. And then my piano teacher kind of gave up teaching. Not maybe just because of me, maybe because of me.
Yeah.
Um, and then I just taught myself. And I was really interested in kind of jazz and blues, when I was young, idea, and really became a bit of a jazz player, self-taught idea mostly. Um, and met some jazz players in Scotland. And really, there was a kind of simple thing when I was a kind of teenager, hanging around in a bar kind of thing, playing piano with, some woman who was a singer, who was a really experienced singer, just like, just play Summertime or whatever in the key of X or something like one, two, three, four. And it was really good experience as a piano player, like just the glowering woman who's just like, don't, you're playing the wrong key or something. You really learn how to play in different keys and transpose and do right. Oh, just I'm not playing this verse. I'll join in the next one or something once I've really figured out the idea. Yeah, and really, then I became well, as a student, I was a physics and math student. I did degrees in those things and did a postgraduate in philosophy and some education degrees. I teach a bit in a college and all that. But then I joined a band that became successful around the world, which wasn't really jazz. Yeah, but now just it's kind of where you start, just like any kind of person when you were a teenager, what you were. That's the real thing you are.
Yeah.
Um, I really like some jazz ideas. I listen to quite a lot of jazz radio. Yeah, mhm. And get ideas sometimes of new kind of instrumentals or something just because I hear something maybe from the 70s or the 80s or just the groove and the bass line or something like that. And you think, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what was the first live show you saw that blew you away?
The very first one I went to was, I think it was the very first gig I went to, which was, I think, probably when I was about 16, went to see Count Basie,
Wow.
the Count Basie Orchestra, who were playing in Glasgow, Scotland,
Wow.
you know, when they were quite old, but yeah, they were great. Yeah.
That's
It just really, I do totally love Basie's piano playing. I've been on interviews in Australia and other places with a big band, and they ask me, who's your favorite piano player? And there's a few, you know, uh, I would say Basie's just like beautiful light touch, but
yeah,
there's other kind of modernist piano players I could talk about, but really, just really, I love the way he does, you know the tasteful piano, but you can play anything. Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you've been at this for a long time.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the modern jazz scene, the modern players, what's going on right now? Has it gotten
Oh,
better?
I like some. It's something I really well. Another piano player I really love is an American guy called Don Poulin. I
Yeah.
love his kind of wild piano playing. Um, And I like some experimental players, but I think I'm maybe like a lot of people who just like after about 2.5 minutes, you're kind of like want something of a groove to happen or something
Yeah.
or a melody. But I really love you know, the kind of wild world of Coltrane and things, and maybe Cecil Taylor and just like kind of ideas of modernist jazz. Yeah, I really like the mix of that. Yeah, yeah.
So, what do you like
Yeah.
the best about being a professional musician? What gets you up every day? What pushes you to evolve and love this life of being a musician?
I just have a load of ideas about kind of just like pretty much nowadays what you can do really in my kind of I've got a grand piano, I've got acoustic guitar, I've got electric guitar, I've got keyboard that makes organ sounds, I've got computer that I can record in and synthesizer, just here. And then I might just hear something and go like, wow, I really like that bass line. It just go ding dong da 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 ding dong da 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 and then I think, oh, that could be an organ groove or something like that. Or it could be a saxophone thing, or it could be a trumpet line or something like that. Just like I think there's a big thing. I remember seeing a program kind of recently, and it was about Motown, and it was just Berry Gordy and Smokey Robinson said at the start, when we started recording, we just got jazz players in because they had that ability of just you get the Temptations, now you get the Supremes, you can raise it up four semitones or something. Other players can't really do this. They've got that flexibility, and I've got that flexibility. I can just play in any key uh, idea and think, oh, just like, oh, I'll make this a waltz, or I'll make this, in 4/4 or in 5/4 or something like that. Other people in the band I'm successful with can't do that thing,
Yeah,
but jazz gives you that. You know, that possibility that, particularly with kind of songs I write or whatever, jazz songs or something like, oh, that doesn't, key doesn't suit you right. I can just play it in another key, a semitone down or something.
yeah,
Uh, and really with a gig, it's just that right now idea
yeah,
that you don't need time for. But really, jazz musicians are the only ones who can really do that.
yeah. So, why do you love this art form we call jazz?
I think it's well, I was teaching a guy at this last gig I did, which was at this jazz club thing. It's a beautiful grand piano. There's it just is a kind of cool place in Glasgow. And I had this young guy at 17 who's a bass player. He plays with an orchestra. Just jazz. You've got to be, you're not a reader. He's a super reader in an orchestra, a young guy. And I did about four rehearsals with him just to play Debussy's Clair de Lune as I think, as the next idea is going to be about Paris. Now, I said to the audience, this is a famous French melody. Um, but I just, I can jazz it up. Yeah, it goes down da 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 da. Right, but I just saying to the bass player, all you got to do is play this bass line, dong, dong, da 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 dong, dong, da 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 da, and you just stick to that idea.
Yeah,
But then at one bit, it's just a look and a gaze, uh, where. No, just this bit where the music changes slightly. It changes key, and it goes up a semitone, another semitone, another semitone, and it changes time signature. And it's this kind of way of just like live. You've got to be in the real time. You know, it's totally different than when you're playing with an orchestra. All you're doing is reading a thing.
yeah.
But it's just these tiny wee gazes and this kind of you know, real sense of life. Yeah, so I do really like that. Sometimes I go to jazz gigs in Glasgow and see, Raymond who plays sax and a lot of the numbers are right. And sometimes it's super experimental, and then I see another piano player, and it's just I I like a lot of different jazz piano players, but the in the experimental sense, he's got a guy who's from South Africa, I think, but just like how do you not have tram lines? How do you not play, blues scales or other scales? But just that, amazing kind of. I love. I don't mind some kind of cabaret jazz things, but I really like, artists who have got originality,
Hmm.
of the way they think. And it's the creative aspect of it,
Yeah.
of playing.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, mhm.
So, Andy, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you: family, friends, fans, everyone you play with on the bandstand. But you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Uh, I don't think, I'm not a super jazz player,
Right.
but I've got ideas about it. Because I'm not super trained in jazz or classical music, but I've just got ideas. There was a guy in Scotland who's, basically, of doing these kind of live things with the guy I'm working with. Um, there was a guy in Scotland called Brian Kellock, who's kind of the most famous piano player because also kind of musicians in different worlds of, maybe violin or whatever, would just know who's the real star.
Yeah.
They just, in the internal world of musicians, you just know, like, shit, I can't do that. And so Brian Kellock was the guy who played in Ronnie Scott's and abroad and with famous artists, had made albums with, and then he went and died. But the guy he was working with is the guy who found me, and other piano players were scared of going in this direction because this guy's a real super piano player, and I just I'm up for doing it.
Yeah.
Playing it in my way and you adding my personality to it. Because mine's kind of melodic, I think.
Yeah.
Not super virtuosic. I mean, sometimes I can do kind of really fast runs and all that,
Yeah.
except I don't really, in a way, I don't really think I can. I
Yeah.
just do it, because I've got my own way of doing things.
Yeah.
Uh, all the way back in time, but I didn't really super concentrate on the jazz track.
Yeah.
But I can basically play in any key and anything. Yeah, and I kind of like that. I do kind of. I mean, I wish I had higher abilities of kind of, Oscar Peterson way of doing things or Art Tatum, but there's no way,
Yeah.
of me kind of, I can just do what I do myself,
Yeah.
and it's enough for me. And I can play some other instruments. I can play guitar. I can play some other things. Oh, just if you want me, for the French thing, I might play accordion and that with the bass player or whatever, or some guitar or something. But it's all about, for me, about the sound has got to be right. The, not necessarily the solos, but it's got to be fit in with the song exactly right.
Yeah.
And I do really think there's something about, because there was something about Brian Kelly, this really famous piano player. I was round at a friend who's a record producer and who's playing some stuff on Spotify, and it was by about track four. I was like, "There's too many bloody notes there."
Yeah.
Just like he's meant to be the accompanist.
Yeah.
There's a kind of famous singer, but it's a bit kind of show offy, and I quite like that. Just kind of like sometimes you're doing nothing or you're doing some tiny, and it's just like. It's the melodic kind of aspect of it,
Yeah.
and it's not the kind of another ego idea.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, Dreamtime is the new album. If anybody wants to pick up a copy, catch
Mhm.
you live, previous works, any of the good business going on in your world, where's the best place for people to go?
Well, that's on Spotify. That which is a kind of useless thing, but I kind of use Spotify for radio,
Okay.
where I get things played on some radio stations in America.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, and there's another thing I thought about with a jazz thing about uh, smooth jazz.
Yeah.
You know, it was basically a radio station. It was something I didn't really know about.
Yeah.
But there's a radio station in Australia who just said to me, "Oh, we play smooth jazz," and the guy sent me some examples of the tracks, and it's just like, oh, piano player, whatever. Oh, it's basically a groovy bass line,
Yeah.
and
Right.
that's a piano thing,
Yeah.
and then a guitar player I got in touch with from Dundee in Scotland that I remember a friend of mine who did a gig in London with a support band who were supporting George Benson. He said, "Oh, George Benson, and there's a really simple fact, really, like George Benson could play any style.
Yeah.
He could play bebop or he
Yep.
could play experimental or whatever, but his audience likes smooth jazz.
Yeah.
And really, in kind of radio stations worldwide,
Yeah.
that's a big area.
Uh-huh.
But it's not really my field. I
Yeah.
can do that as well. So
Sure.
I've got a smooth jazz album as well.
Yeah.
And I did think basically the Dreamtime thing, that's kind of mainstream jazz. And I made this record called Night Shift because I kind of thought smooth jazz is about driving about at night
Yeah.
in a minicab or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
Which is just kind of like, it's kind of high piano lines and groovy, beat and all that, and slight jazziness.
Yeah.
And that gets played in a lot of places.
Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It certainly
But
does.
I like a lot of, it wasn't really something I was really interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was going like, yeah, I can do that,
Yeah.
Ah, yeah, and it's a kind of viable place to go, but it's not really my chosen, out of listening
Yeah.
kind of thing. But I do kind of respect it.
Yeah.
These people like Bob Last or they're kind of well-known piano players I didn't really know about
Sure.
or never had any interest in.
Yeah.
But or George Benson or something. But I do kind of respect
Yeah.
your kind of particular way of looking at things, of doing it for your audience. Um, so I've got ideas about that,
Yeah.
but I also I it's not my only kind of string to my bow. I also like experimental
Yeah.
ideas. Yeah, I'm really because I think particularly in the jazz thing, I see that as a kind of key thing, about progression and the development of jazz,
Yeah.
about uh, and I love kind of little ideas where I think, oh, this would be good with a bagpipe or something like, just like a Scottish it's jazz, but I've got access to bagpipes and other things or weird, kind of instruments
Yeah.
that aren't really what your thing is that could be quite experimental, but with an amazing soprano saxophone
Yeah.
or something. And yeah, and it's just, you know, it's a way which doesn't fit into normal rock and roll way of hits thinking, but it's got potential
For sure.
where I really kind of think it's got to justify itself
Yeah.
if you got another idea
Yep.
about another kind of weird instrument, but that weirdness can sometimes be a key thing
Yeah.
because jazz has got, I think, got that not just the mainstream cabaret world, it's got other potential,
For sure.
which all the way through jazz history
Yep.
was a thing about
Yeah.
changing, about surprising people, say with bebop
Yep.
or the 60s modernist scene or Art Ensemble of Chicago or electronic Miles Davis thing where people were kind of shocked
Yep.
and I think that'd be a tragic thing for jazz to lose
Hmm.
where it's just a way of looking in the rear view mirror because I've kind of always got new ideas. Um, mhm. Right.
Absolutely.
And maybe because of my rock and roll kind of thing
Yeah.
has got more slightly different ideas than just, oh, these are old jazz standards,
Yeah.
which are basically done. And I kind of think I was talking to a friend earlier. Say, Ella Fitzgerald singing Manhattan. If a girl gets up and sings that in Glasgow, it's really hard to get off the beaten track
Yeah.
with Ella's singing or Nina Simone singing of standards or I love these artists,
Sure.
but I don't really see the point in recreating that art.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally
Hmm.
agree. Well, I love the album. I'm looking forward to profiling it on the show, so I will put the link up, the Spotify link that you sent over
Yeah,
to me. Thank you again for reaching out to Neon Jazz. This has been wonderful. Thank you for opening up your world a little bit,
yeah.
and best of luck with the release. And before you go.
Neon Jazz.